Hi guys, welcome back. This is part 2 in my tutorial on how to paint a Napoleonic French Cuirassier. Last week we painted the horse and tack, and this week we'll be focusing on the Cuirassier himself. If you have not seen part 1, I really recommend that you go back and watch it first. I've linked it in the description of this video, and I've also included a more extensive introduction there so you can get a better idea of what we're doing. So first off, here are all the paints that you're going to need for this model. I should note this is for the Cuirassier only. Part 1 includes the paints that you need for the horse, though it is worth noting that there is quite a bit of overlap in colors here, but there are a few small differences in what you'll need for the horse and the rider. I'm going to start off working on the white areas of the uniform here, which basically include the pants, the sort of straps for the sword scabbard, the gloves, and sort of the little strap that holds the sword around his wrist. I'm base coating all these areas to start off with using Vallejo Sky Gray. Now the gloves I want to end up being a slightly different shade than the rest, so I'm just going to put one really thin light coat on those and then kind of forget about it for the moment. But the other areas I'm going to apply several coats to build up, good coverage. Because the gloves are leather and I want a warmer tone, I'm now going to apply a layer of Vallejo Buff over top of the Sky Gray. If you don't think it's strong enough, definitely apply a couple layers here because you want a good, strong, warm tone. Now I'm going to start highlighting here with a mixture that's about 50-50 Sky Gray and white. It's pretty thin and transparent, so you're going to want to apply quite a few layers of it here to really build it up. I'm obviously going to be emphasizing the areas where light hits and the tops of wrinkles and folds and leaving that Sky Gray down in the creases and shadows, but we're going for overall subtle effect here because that's what looks best when you're shading white. So I'm taking care of the pants first and then all the straps and belts and things that are also going to be painted white. My first highlight on the gloves just involves making a 50-50 mix this time of the buff and white. And again, I'm doing the same thing, building up a couple layers of it on top of my base coat where I want extra emphasis, like, kind of defining the fingers and the seams and that sort of thing. And now I'm just going to go in with some thinned down white paint and sort of continue highlighting. White is the only other color you'll need for this area, really, and you just achieve different tone and shade just by keeping the paint thin and just building it up over multiple layers. I find, personally, when you're doing something like these white pants, where you're going to want a big range of sort of gray up to very bright white, you're probably going to have to maybe apply 5 to 6 layers of paint at least before you kind of reach sort of the maximum brightness that's going to make it look like he's wearing white clothing. So, just have some patience and keep going around and around. Luckily on this miniature, the areas of white are pretty small, so that allows you to do things pretty quickly. I'm kind of painting and highlighting the gloves simultaneously because the highlight I'm using on them is also white. Even though it's the same shade, because white's so transparent and we're applying it over a really different kind of base, the results are going to look a little bit different. We're going to get a more warm shade there, a warmer white, whereas we have a cooler white on the pants and straps. And I'm just doing the same thing. I'm just building up several layers of white and gradually lightening it. You probably don't have to go so far with highlighting on the gloves or applying as many layers because you probably want to leave a little bit more of that sort of warm yellow tone showing through. Next, I'm going to be painting the uniform jacket as far as you can see it. It should be a very deep black blue. And mostly you're just only going to be painting sort of the tails of his jacket and his sleeves, which is really all there is. I've made a base coat here by mixing black with dark Prussian blue. My first highlight then is going to be just pure dark Prussian blue over the black base coat. There's going to be pretty low contrast at this point, so you don't have to be too careful about what you're doing. Just kind of leave the base color only in the darkest creases. Now I'm going to highlight the blue further. These French uniform jackets were a very, very black blue color, but I like to build it up a little higher than would be natural just because I feel like at this scale it just doesn't have enough contrast otherwise. So what I've got here is a mixture of the dark Prussian blue and some regular Vallejo blue, about 50-50 again, and I'm just going to kind of very lightly and thinly layer it on top of folds and creases and areas like that in the sleeves particularly. And you can build up a couple of layers too because we're working over black. You can get more tone that way in the model. I then finish up with just some Vallejo pure blue, but very, very thin because we don't want this to get too bright or vibrant, and then just lightly kind of layer it extra kind of on the most sort of extreme highlight areas on the jacket. Next, I'm going to be base coating the red areas on the jacket, which include the turnbacks and some piping. And of course, most importantly, where you're really going to see it is underneath his cuirass. He wears sort of, I don't know what it is exactly, but the end result is you end up with these sort of red trim fringe kind of sticking out all the way around the bottom and the sleeves and everywhere, really. I'm using Vallejo black red for this. Just be a little bit careful when you're doing this, obviously, so you don't make a mess. Also, I didn't mention it, but you're going to want to base coat those sort of straps that go over the top front of his cuirass. Even though those are kind of gold metal, they have sort of red fabric trim on the edges of them, and it's easier if we just paint the red first before we try to deal with the gold. Now I'm going to start highlighting the red. My first layer here is Citadel Mephiston red. I've thinned it down a little bit because it's a base paint, it's pretty thick, so you need to do that. I'm just going to go over all the red areas and sort of start building it up. You can apply a couple layers here without it getting too strong. I'm only really leaving the black red down in really dark recesses or dividing areas and just kind of going along and building this up kind of until I'm happy with it. This shouldn't be too difficult for you just because these are small, thin areas and you won't need to do very much blending. Because the red in the Napoleonic uniform was a very bright, brilliant shade of scarlet, I'm now going in with some Evil Sun Scarlet from Citadel and adding an extra highlight, which, like the last one, I'm going to build up a little bit. Depending on what regiment of cuirassiers you're painting, you're going to need to pay, of course, attention here to what the trim color is. It might not necessarily be red. You might even end up with a different jacket color. There's not many. I think there's only one regiment that had a different jacket color. Most of them, there are going to be some combination of red and blue, but you might end up with some variation here. So depending on what you chose to paint, you may not be using the red, actually, but some other shade. But as I mentioned in sort of part one of the tutorial, this is just the first regiment of cuirassiers, so you get the blue with the red trim. Now this next part is a little bit fussy, and this was one of the main reasons that you don't want to paint these cuirassiers when they're already mounted on their horses, because it makes it so much harder. The sort of red trim on the cuirass is red, but then it has sort of a white border or a bit of piping along the edge of it, and that's a little bit fiddly to paint. Further complicating that is that because this is an officer, his trim would be sort of a silver instead of a white, and it's pretty hard to really indicate non-metallic metal when you're doing something so thin and fine, but I'm going to try my best here. So I'm using Vallejo dark blue gray here and a very small brush. I'm working with a number 0 instead of my usual number 1, and I've got my paint nice and thin here, and I'm just going to go along and carefully draw a thin line all around sort of the edges of that border piece. The only thing that is going to be to your favor here is you've got these sort of thin, sharp edges, so it's easier kind of to paint the line. Also, as an officer, he's got epaulettes, which you're going to want to paint differently depending on what rank of officer you're dealing with. I'm going to make mine silver here too, so I'm base coating them as well. Once that's done, I'm going to start highlighting and trying at least to show the non-metallic metal nature of this. Again, it's so thin, you're not really going to see a lot of difference between this and the normal troopers, which would have all of this trim in white, basically. And if they had epaulettes, they would be in red, so good to know there. What I've got now is some Vallejo silver gray, which is thin, and again, I'm now going back over that trim and sort of applying highlights and really leaving that dark color sort of periodically along my line, especially down in folds, sort of to have that really high contrast between light and dark that makes it look non-metallic metal. And you want to also keep that high contrast, really high dark and really light on that epaulette. That's how you're going to get the same effect. Once that silver gray is on, I'm then going to go back in with just pure white and kind of do a similar thing. With the white, you want to try to keep the paint as thick as you're able to, given the scale you're working at. It does have to be thin or you're going to have trouble, but thicker is a little bit better here if you can manage it, just because you'll get an intenser white more quickly, and that's easier. And keep the white subtle. You don't want to use very much of it. You want to just dot it on in some very kind of choice areas where you want to show that there's an extreme amount of light hitting the piping or the epaulette. Now I'm going to worry about his boots and stirrups, and I'm just going to base coat those here with black paint again, just to make sure there's some good coverage and neaten up any places where I got white on them. I'm also going to throw the black on his headdress, on that horsehair plume he's got going on. I'll go back over it again later, but I thought I'd just go ahead and base coat it now, sort of in a preliminary sense, while I had the black paint out. I'm now going to work on highlighting the leather boots and stirrup straps. First, I've got some German gray here, and I'm going to, again, be applying this to most areas of the boots. I'm really only leaving the black down in kind of sharp folds and dividing lines and that kind of thing. I want to show some real sort of dimension on the boots because there is wrinkles and folds in them, and they're fairly large, so you maybe want to do a little bit of blending of the German gray out into some of those darker areas. Once that base highlight is on, then you can start making higher highlight shades using just a little bit of sky gray mixed in there. You'll notice too that he's got sort of a fur cover on the bottom part of his hat. And I am also going to be painting it black and highlighting it with the same grays. I just don't want to go as high a highlight as I'm going to go on the boots, because it shouldn't be shiny like the leather should. You can see my first mixture of the German gray and sky gray is pretty subtle, and I'm starting to really pick out and define where those wrinkles and folds are in the leather. If they end up looking a little bit too intense, you may want to go back in with some German gray, tone that down a little bit. I'm then going to make one other highlight, adding in more sky gray, same deal, and continue that highlighting process on the boots. I would not use that highlight again on the fur of the hat unless you want maybe an edge highlight, but that's about it. And I did finish off with just pure sky gray, just on a very few tiny bits of the boots as an edge highlight on like the toes and around the tops, just to emphasize sort of the shininess of the leather. But I would go real easy on that if you decide to just do it by itself. Next, I'm going to start working on the steel areas, which are, of course, very, very important on this model, so you want to take your time and do a lot of different layers. I'm taking German gray here, and I'm going to just be making my colors by mixing in Vallejo air steel. Sometimes I work with gunmetal too, but I don't want to complicate this figure with lots and lots of different paints that you don't really need. So we're going to keep it with German gray and steel. So my first base coat is going to be mostly German gray with just a little steel. The steel is real intense, so a little bit will go a long way. So I'm base coating all these metal areas just with this dark metallic gray. So that's going to be like the metal on his stirrups, his scabbard, his cuirass, parts of his helmet, and of course the blade of his sword are all going to be getting this treatment. Because we are, again, as I said, dealing with some pretty large metal areas here and we want a nice subtle finish, I'm just going to make highlights for the metal by just gradually mixing in more and more of the steel. Go easy here, don't do it too quickly. I think I maybe made 3 or maybe even 4 highlight layers in total by mixing in more and more steel. And I'm just going to be gradually building it up on all these areas, going really, really slowly so you don't end up with any really extreme contrast. I mean, obviously we do want this to be very, very shiny in the end, but we don't want to make big jumps because it's blending metallics from a really dark to a really light in one go is particularly tricky. So it's really, really good if you just keep working it up. And that's especially going to show on places like the helmet and the cuirass and on the sword blade too, which is just really, really important. And keep your paint thin as you apply it. Build it up just like you would with all the others. You would probably just don't need to go quite as high highlighting the stirrups, I'd say, because obviously they would be getting more wear and just not have the same shiny factor as the rest of the metal areas. I finished off the steel areas with just then pure Vallejo air steel, which is really, really shiny. I used it quite thinly, and you shouldn't need to put too much of it on at this point, but if you've done your job well with gradually building up the layers before, you should be able to apply it without seeing a really sort of stark transition between it and the other colors, and that's what you want. You want it to just give you this extra super shine where you need it, but not have a really sort of really noticeable transition between the other areas. Our cuirassier's got a little leather strap that holds on the cuirass around the waist. And this is the one area of this whole model that's brown leather, and I didn't want to have to get a lot of extra brown paints that I didn't need. So I base coated this with German camouflage black brown, and I then applied a layer of chocolate brown over top, and then finally, in order to avoid using some lighter browns, I just mixed some buff into the chocolate brown to achieve some highlights. It'll hardly show on the finished figure anyway, so you don't have to worry about this too much. Now I'm going to work on the gold areas, and I'm going to be approaching this in the same way that I approached the steel. There are fewer of them that you need to paint, but their impact is really huge, so you want to do a good job. Obviously, you've got the sort of the shoulder straps on the cuirass that you're dealing with. The handle on his sword would be gold. There's also, most importantly, the areas on the helmet, which include the crest, and also all the sort of border edging trim around that sort of fur pelt, and then of course the straps that hold the whole thing on. And my base coat here is a mixture of German camouflage black brown and some Vallejo Air gold. It's mostly German camouflage black brown at this point, and that just needs to be your base color. Since there are a lot less gold areas, I felt like I didn't have to highlight quite so gradually as I did on the steel. So I made my first highlight just by mixing a bit more gold into my base coat and just going over all the areas again, sort of building it up gradually. After I had done that, I then just went back in and took some pure Vallejo Air gold and started going over that. Because we're working over such a dark base, you're going to get a more rich bronzy color anyway that's fairly dark, so you've got some room too if you want to build up some extra layers of the same paints. Here I am just working more with the pure gold and kind of using it to pick out details on the shoulder straps and on the helmet. You want to, with these higher gold colors, you want to be careful, be kind of selective about where you put the paint. I finished off the gold by mixing some of the Vallejo Air steel into the gold, about 50-50, and real thin, very lightly. I'm just going to apply it to some areas of the gold, just kind of dotting it on to add that extra shine and bling that you'd expect to see on these helmets. Don't, as I've said before with this sort of thing, don't go too heavy with this or you'll just kind of ruin the effect. Now I'm going to go back in and finish up the horsehair crest. I'm just going to reapply some black to it because I kind of wore some off while I was working on the gold. Once I've got my base coat back the way I want, I'm going to take the dark blue gray and mix it 50-50 with the black, and I'm just kind of overbrush the crest with it. You can be pretty imprecise with this, just kind of make sure you cover the whole thing, and if it gets down in the creases, that's really not important at this point. I'm then going to take just pure dark blue gray, and I'm going to do the same thing, over brushing, not really worrying too much, but I am going to focus this lighter color more just on the sort of the top area of the crest and not really worry about more down to the sides. And this is why we didn't really worry too much about how we painted this, because now I'm going to apply washes. I'm using a Zerman blue here and applying sort of an overall medium wash to this whole area. And you can see that's going to kind of add detail to the recesses. Once the blue wash is dry, I'm going to go back in with Nuln Oil and apply that. Again, I'm not going to put that everywhere, though. I'm really going to focus that more down along the sides of the crest in the area where I want there to be more shadow, so that you end up with a lighter looking sort of color on the top of the crest, and then it looks a little bit more dark down to the side. Our cuirassier is done at this point, so now I'm going to mount him on his horse using some super glue. The easiest way probably to do this is actually to first dry fit the rider on the horse, check where he kind of contacts the horse's body, and then go ahead and use a toothpick to dab some super glue on sort of the relevant parts of the horse's saddle. I found after I put my rider on that his legs were really a lot wider than I liked, so I actually just used my fingers to really kind of push the legs together a little bit extra, which also had the added benefit of holding him on. Okay, so here is our finished French Napoleonic Cuirassier officer mounted on his horse. This was a very complicated model to paint, as you might expect, but at the same time it was a lot of fun. I honestly think I spent more time working on the horse than I did on the rider in the end, but that's probably not surprising because horse flesh is always just a little bit of a pain in the ass. Another thing that I did not show, but I have done here on this finished model, is I've applied a layer of enamel matte varnish to everything and let it dry. And the reason I did that was because the blue, particularly the blue paint from Vallejo, has a tendency to dry kind of satin and get real shiny. It's kind of hard to see the trueness of the color. So when I'm dealing with things like that, the varnish is really helpful to sort of dull it down and, you know, just make it look more attractive on the finished model. And it certainly looks better here in this video where I'm showing you the end result. So I hope you enjoyed watching both part 1 and part 2 of this series. If you did, please like the video, share it, leave me comments with what you thought, and please do subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. So that is all for now, and I will see you next time.